You retired with $800,000 in savings. The house is paid off, and by every number you can see, the picture looks solid. Social Security kicks in next year, maybe a pension, maybe a CD ladder. It feels secure. But there's a version of this story where the exact things making you feel secure are quietly compressing your financial life. It won't show up for 5 years. By the time it does, the window to fix it has already closed. The couple who kept the house to pass to the kids, paid off, beautiful. Also costing them $23,000 a year on rooms nobody sleeps in. The retiree who waited until 70 for Social Security because he heard it was smarter. He died at 72. The woman who kept 5 years of cash as a safety net while inflation quietly removed 15 cents from every dollar. Her statement showed no losses. The damage was invisible. The man who never did a single Roth conversion because he didn't want to pay taxes. He felt he didn't owe. Then he turned 73 and the IRS had a very different opinion about what he owed. None of these are irresponsible people. They played by rules that used to work. So sit with this question. What if the behavior that built your retirement is now the exact behavior slowly eating it? Here's the first thing I'll show you. Why holding too much cash in retirement is not a conservative move it appears to be. Accumulation and decumulation are not the same game. Different rules, different winning conditions, different failure modes. Think of your retirement savings as a water tower. For 40 years, your only job was to fill it. Every paycheck, every market recovery, more water in the tower. A full tower felt safe. That instinct was correct. But retirement changes the goal. Now the tower must deliver water at the right pressure, to the right places, in the right sequence. A tower full of the wrong kind of water doesn't deliver well. You end up technically wealthy and practically trapped. Start with the most basic version. You have $200,000 in savings, earning around 4%. That's $8,000 a year. Real money. Here's the problem. Your personal inflation rate runs higher than the headline. Healthcare compounds at 5 to 7% a year. You earn 4% on cash but lose 3 to 5% in real purchasing power. The spread is razor thin, and interest income is fully taxable as ordinary income. Net real return on that $200,000 might be 1%, maybe less. Over 10 years at 1% real, your $200,000 quietly loses $30,000 to $40,000 of real value by doing exactly what felt safe. That's only the first layer. The second is opportunity cost, and it gets genuinely uncomfortable. That same $200,000 in a diversified portfolio at 7% becomes roughly $380,000 to $400,000 over 10 years. The gap is around $200,000 of foregone wealth. That's a year or two of income, a health event, a legacy. I'm not saying put everything in equities. I'm saying cash feels like safety and costs real money every single year. Your statement shows your balance. It never shows the column labeled what this would have been worth. The water tower looks full, but it's full of the wrong kind of water. Now let me show you something fascinating, the 4% rule. The idea you can safely withdraw 4% a year and never run out. It came from a single 1994 paper by a planner named William Bengen using market data going back to 1926. The math was real for its time, but almost everything underneath it has changed since 1994. Life expectancy at 65 jumped 4 to 5 years. A 30-year retirement is now a real planning horizon, not a tail risk. Bond yields spent 30 years near zero, wrecking the return assumptions baked into Bengen's balanced portfolio. Equity valuations sit structurally higher than historical norms, which implies lower expected returns ahead. And healthcare costs, barely modeled in 1994, are now one of the largest line items in the retiree budget. Run the model with today's inputs, and the real safe withdrawal rate is closer to 3 to 3.5% on $1 million portfolio, is $30,000 a year before taxes, not the $40,000 most planning software still assumes. So you either spend less, which is emotionally brutal, or earn more, which a cash-heavy position simply can't deliver. If your tower is too full of low-yield cash, you're not running a conservative strategy. You're running a strategy with a real chance of coming up short somewhere around year 15 to 22. People don't model that. They look at the balance, divide by spending, feel okay, and move on. They never run the harder version, run that model with today's numbers, and researchers who revisited it without an agenda land somewhere different. The safe withdrawal rate looks closer to 3 to 3.5%. 3% on $1 million portfolio is $30,000 a year, not $300,000. 30 before taxes even touch it. If you planned around 4% and the real number is closer to 3, you face two hard choices. Spend less or take more market risk than cash can ever deliver. A tower too full of cash can't support even a 3% withdrawal after inflation and taxes. That isn't conservative. That's a quiet shortfall waiting at year 15. Most people look at the balance, divide by spending, feel fine, and move on. They never run the inflation-adjusted, tax-adjusted, healthcare escalating version of the math. Now let me take you where most retirement talks never go. This is where the real money quietly hides. Meet Robert, 35 years maxing out his 401k and IRA, deferring taxes because in 1992 an advisor told him he'd be in a lower bracket someday. Robert is now 72. He's got $1.4 million tax deferred, $28,000 in Social Security, and $18,000 pension. He lives on $65,000. Everything feels manageable. Then Robert turned 73. Required minimum distributions begin. The IRS doesn't ask whether you need the money, they calculate it and demand it. That first RMD on $1.4 million lands near $52,000. Stacked on Social Security and pension, Robert now reports $98,000 of taxable income. That isn't what his advisor meant by lower bracket in retirement. Robert is now pushed into the 22, maybe 24% federal bracket. But it doesn't stop there. That income triggers RMAA, the surcharge that quietly inflates your Medicare premiums. Base Medicare Part B runs about $185 a month. Cross the income thresholds and it can balloon toward $400, even $500 per person. For a couple, that's $9,000 to $12,000 a year in premiums the original plan never budgeted. Nobody mentioned RMAA back in 1995. And the account keeps growing. Robert doesn't need all the RMD. So the balance, the RMDs, and the tax cost all compound right alongside the wealth. I call this the tax bomb. It's sat inside the 401k the whole time. Invisible, growing, armed. The people most exposed aren't reckless spenders. They're the disciplined savers who did exactly what they were told and never ran the second-order math. Here's the tool that diffuses it, and why too much cash makes the problem worse. The Roth conversion. You move money from a traditional IRA, pay taxes today, and shift it into a Roth, where all future growth and withdrawals are tax-free, with no RMDs. It isn't a loophole. It's a deliberate provision of the tax code that's existed for decades. Conversions cost the least when your income is low. The sweet spot is the years between retirement and 73, before Social Security and RMDs fully kick in. At 62 or 65 and retired, you may be sitting in the lowest tax bracket of your entire life. That window is real and it has a closing date. Spend those years draining cash instead of the IRA, because cash feels like spending money and the IRA feels untouchable and you waste the whole window. Here's the math. A couple converting $80,000 to $100,000 a year from 62 to 72, paying 16 to 20%, can slash their future RMD exposure dramatically. Bring a $1.4 million IRA down to $600,000 by 73, and that first RMD is roughly $22,000, not $52,000. You never cross the IRA AA threshold. The Medicare surcharge disappears. Total taxes paid voluntarily, around $100,000 to $120,000 at a rate you controlled. Total taxes avoided over a 20-year retirement, potentially $250,000 to $350,000. That isn't a rounding error. That's a second outcome from the same assets, and the main thing blocking that outcome, a water tower full of cash nobody wanted to stop filling. Now let me go somewhere harder, because it involves family. And I want to be precise, not sentimental. A couple in their late 60s owns a house worth $700,000. They paid $40,000 for it in 1978. It's paid off beautiful and full of memories, but it carries $12,000 in property taxes, plus $8,000 to $10,000 in maintenance, insurance, and repairs. Total holding costs $22,000 a year. 2 of the 4 bedrooms haven't been slept in since 2009, but the house stays because they intend to leave it to the kids. Here's the structure of that choice. $700,000 of illiquid capital, earning zero income, costing $22,000 a year, and losing practical use as the years pass. Compare that to $700,000 invested at a conservative 3.5% withdrawal. That produces $24,500 a year. Almost exactly what the house costs to hold. Selling and renting doesn't cost you income here. It swaps a $22,000 outflow for a $24,500 inflow of roughly the same size. Now the objection forms. What about the stepped-up cost basis? It's real and it has genuine value. Heirs inherit the house at today's value, not the old purchase price. They owe no capital gains on the $660,000 of appreciation. That step-up is genuine, but preserving it costs $22,000 a year. 15 more years is $330,000 out of your pocket. To hand heirs a benefit worth maybe $50,000 to $150,000. The math doesn't always support the decision. The values might. And that's a real family conversation. But most people never run this calculation. Then there's the liquidity trap. With $700,000 locked in the house, your accessible money is dangerously thin. A health event costing $180,000 to $200,000 over 18 months drains your cash fast and forces you into the IRA at the worst possible time for taxes. You're sitting on a $700,000 asset you can't touch without selling the home you live in. That's not a character flaw. It's a predictable outcome. Meet Richard and Carol, both 68. By every outside measure, they did everything right. Richard retired at 65 after 32 years as an engineer. Carol worked part-time most of her life. Here's their balance sheet. A paid-off home worth $620,000. Richard's traditional IRA, $850,000. Carol's, $120,000. Cash and short-term savings, $240,000. Total investable assets, $1,210,000. Social Security covers $43,000 a year. They spend $72,000. The gap is $29,000. From 65 to 67, they cover that gap almost entirely from cash. It feels clean. It feels safe. Problem 1. Their income is low those years. The perfect window to convert IRA to Roth at 12 to 15%. They don't. Paying taxes you don't have to pay today feels absurd, understandable, also expensive. Problem 2. By 68, the cash is down to $170,000. The dropping balance makes them nervous, so they start both Social Security benefits early, at 68. It feels like the practical move. Problem 3. Claiming at 68 instead of 70 costs roughly 25 to 30% of lifetime benefit. For Carol, who likely outlives Richard, the survivor benefit she'll rely on is permanently lower. That number shows up nowhere on the statement. It just quietly shrinks her income as a widow. Problem 4. At 73, Richard's RMDs begin. That $850,000 has grown to about $1,250,000. The first forced withdrawal, nearly $50,000, income they didn't want and didn't need. Now they sit above $90,000 of income against the $72,000 need. Taxes owed on nearly all of it. ERMA surcharges hit their Medicare, extra $12,000 to $15,000 that year over a planned strategy. Problem 5. Richard passes, Carol becomes a single filer. The brackets just got half as wide. The same income that taxed them at 22% as a couple now taxes Carol at 24 to 32% alone. The RMDs continue, the surcharges continue. Carol manages a structure never built for the life she's now living. Now watch the same people make different decisions. Same assets, same house, same spending. From 65 to 72, they draw from the IRAs for the gap, keeping an 18 to 24-month cash buffer. They use the low-tax early years to convert $80,000 to $90,000 a year to Roth at 16 to 18%. Total conversion taxes across 7 years, roughly $95,000 to $115,000. Uncomfortable to write. Correct. By 72, the traditional IRA is down to about $460,000. The Roth has grown to nearly $400,000. Untouched. First RMD at 70. Only $17,000 to $18,000. Not $50,000. Not enough to trigger the cascade. Social Security delayed to 70. Richard's benefit jumps to $36,000 to $38,000. Carol's survivor benefit improves. At 82, Carol draws tax-free Roth income to supplement Social Security, staying below the thresholds. Her tax bill is minimal, her Medicare premium manageable. She has flexibility almost no one in her position has. Same people, same assets, same house, different sequencing. The gap? $250,000 to $350,000 over 20 years. That number is one thing, the cost of drawing from the wrong pipe, in the wrong order, at the wrong time, and the root cause is always the same. Cash comfort, the instinct to protect rather than to root. This conversation happens at dinner tables across America. So Dad, what about the house? We're leaving it to you kids. The child nods. Later in the car, do we even want it? Nobody says it out loud. The house just sits there, costing $22,000 a year, waiting for a talk that never comes. Now the part harder than the math. Spending down a portfolio feels wrong in a way that's hard to describe. For 40 years, every time the balance rose, it felt like progress. Every drop felt like failure. That feedback loop was your engine. It built real results. Then retirement flips the goal entirely. Now the number is designed to go down. That's not a bug. That's the design. That's what the money is for. I've watched people with $2 million refuse to turn the heat above 68, terrified of running out. They skip travel, skip dental care, skip the retirement they wanted, not from lack of money, but a 40-year-old alarm that won't stop ringing. The accumulation mindset is a survival tool. It worked exactly as designed for 4 decades. In retirement, applied without modification, that same instinct quietly becomes a liability. The water tower full of cash looks comforting, but it was built to deliver water, not hoard it until the structure degrades. This is not a character flaw. It is a rational response to a transition nobody trains you for. The financial industry spent 40 years helping you fill the tower. Almost nobody has a business built around helping you empty it correctly. So here is the framework I use. The 3-pipe model. Get the mental model right before you make anything concrete. Pipe 1 is liquidity. Cash and short-term reserves. Its purpose is not growth, it is excess. You need 12 to 24 months of expenses here. Enough to ride out a bad market without selling growth assets at depressed prices. Not 5 years, not whatever makes you comfortable. Size this pipe to a purpose, not an emotion. If your reserve exceeds 2 years of spending, that extra cash is doing a psychological job, not a financial one. And psychology has a dollar cost. Pipe 2 is income generation. Your IRA, Roth and brokerage accounts working for a sustainable, inflation-adjusted income stream. This pipe needs real growth exposure. Not 100% equities, but enough that purchasing power holds, not just a nominal balance. And the critical insight, the most important decision is not which fund you pick. It is the account type and the withdrawal sequence. The order you draw from those accounts shapes more of your lifetime after-tax wealth than your allocation or your fund fees ever will. Pipe 3 is legacy. What you intend to leave to children, to charity, to whatever you care about. Legacy assets must be planned, not defaulted into. Keeping the house for the kids is a default, not a plan. A real plan knows the carrying cost, the tax implications on both ends, and whether your heirs even want what you're leaving them. Roth IRAs, life insurance in the right structures, charitable trusts. These tools are legal and used by people who ran the math. The 3-pipe model is simple in concept. What's hard is overriding 40 years of instinct that screams, fill the pipe, don't empty it. Now one more layer, the most underappreciated risk in retirement, sequence of returns risk. 2 people retire with $1 million, same 6% average return, same $40,000 a year withdrawn, identical on paper. Person A gets good early years, week later. Person B gets losses first, then recovery. Same average, wildly different endings. Person A finishes with $600,000 to $800,000 left. Person B may be broke by year 16. The reason is mechanical. Sell assets into a 30% drop, and the shares you sold never join the recovery. The portfolio never fully heals. During accumulation, a bad market is a buying opportunity. In your first year of retirement, the same market is a threat to the whole plan. The fix is not all cash. That just hands you the inflation and opportunity cost problem instead. The fix is a properly sized liquidity buffer, so you're never forced to sell growth assets at the bottom. That is the real job of the 12 to 24 month reserve. A 5-year buffer oversolves it. Those 3 extra years of idle cash quietly cost you $150,000 to $250,000 in foregone growth. That money doesn't go anywhere visible. It just never gets created. Your statement shows a balance, not the universe where you chose differently. So come back to where we started. You retired with $800,000, the house paid off, Social Security coming, you feel okay. The honest answer, the behavior that built your retirement, might now be working against it. Not from mistakes, but because the second game has different rules. First action, run your RMD math now, not at 73. Model your required distributions at 73, 75, and 80. If those projections push you into a brutal bracket, you have a Roth conversion window open right now. Pay taxes at a rate you control. Second action, size your cash reserve to its job. 12 to 24 months solve sequence risk. Anything more carries a quantifiable cost. Third action, make the legacy conversation explicit. Run the numbers before you default into one decision over a dinner table that never gets direct enough. None of these are exotic strategies. They are structural decisions the accumulation framework never asks you to make. Decumulation is a different job. The tower is full. That's real, earned through genuine discipline. The only question left is whether the water reaches the right pipes in the right sequence before the window narrows further.